Borman grinned from ear to ear. Once we had the weapon, we practiced a few times, destroyed a little property accidentally, and prepared for the big showdown with the furball. The wolf didn't disappoint. He charged into the police station with his teeth and claws, looking to turn us all into pork chops. But he got the beating of his life. I'm telling you, kid, the three little pigs laid the smackdown on his fuzzy behind. But when the smoke cleared, there was something none of us had expected, Swinehorn said. He took off his sunglasses, rubbed the smudge with his shirt, and put them back on. What? Was the weapon? Did it break or something? Sabrina demanded, praying that the device was still intact. Oh no, the weapon was just fine. It's just, well, we got a big surprise. What? Mr. Canis, Bowman said. I'm confused, Sabrina said. So were we. Still are to a certain degree, Bowman explained. All I know is that there was no such person as Mr. Canis before that fight. We didn't know he existed until that moment. Maybe it was the weapon. Maybe we just beat him so bad he split into another person. But when all was said and done, there was no wolf, only Mr. Canis, all gray-haired and skinny. Poor guy didn't have any memories of who he was. He didn't even know that he had once been a monster. He was like a full-grown man who seemed to sprout up out of the dust. We took him to your grandfather. Basil had a lot of experience with stuff like that. But it was Rhoda who took it upon herself to help him. Soon they discovered that Canis could tap into the wolf's power, and even better, he had control over the monster. Rhoda told me she thought that Canis could be a great ally, and he's been living with your family ever since. For 15 years, we've all slept a little easier. I don't know why he lost control, but it happened around the time you girls moved to town. Serena knew exactly what had happened. Canis and Jack, the giant killer, had come to blows, and in the fight, Canis had tasted Jack's blood. After that, the bloodlust seemed to collapse the walls between the family friend and the monster inside him. Sabrina had never suspected how long those walls had taken to build. So this weapon would stop the wolf, but could it give Mr. Canis control again? Swinehorn interrupted. It might. And was it? What is this weapon? Just then, Granny entered the kitchen with a tray of dirty dishes. Oh dear, I had no idea there was anyone in here. I'm afraid that we're losing our little team. Jacob fell asleep an hour ago, and Daphne just dozed off herself. Gentlemen, why don't you two call it a night as well? We appreciate everything you've done. Our pleasure, the man assured her. Sabrina, why don't you help your sister to bed while I say goodbye to our friends? Granny asked. Sabrina was eager to learn more about the weapon, but she knew the time for questions was over for the night. She said her goodbyes and went searching for her sister. Daphne was asleep on the sofa. She gently shook her, and the girl woke enough to walk upstairs. Once they were in their room, Sabrina took off her sister's clothes and pearl necklace and helped her into her pajamas. A vial of Sabrina's lip gloss slipped out of Daphne's purse and rolled across the floor. Sabrina frowned and scooped it up. She pulled the covers up to her sister's elbows and turned off her bedside table lamp. You comfy? She asked the sleepy girl. Daphne mumbled something unintelligible. Moments later, the little girl was sound asleep and snoring. Sabrina lay there watching her little sister. A sliver of silver shined in Sabrina's eyes. The moonlight was reflecting off the tiny key around Daphne's neck. For the second morning in a row, everyone was woken by a loud bang on the front door. Sabrina hurried out of bed and down the stairs, smoothing her hair as she went, and wishing Robin Hood wasn't such an early riser. But when she stepped into the hallway, she heard her uncle, who had beaten her downstairs, cry, It's here! It's here! To the gathering group. What's here? Daphne asked the others. Granny shrugged. Uncle Jake opened the door, and on the other side was a small spotted rabbit wearing a blue jacket and a matching ball cap. His shirt had a company logo that read THD, Tortoise and Hand Deliveries Worldwide. Under his little arm, he held a clipboard and ink pen, and next to him on the porch was an immense wooden chest sitting on the back of a large green tortoise. When Daphne saw the animals, she squealed. "You were so cute, I could eat you," she cried. And when she saw Sabrina's amused smile, she straightened her face. I'm pleased to meet you." "You, Jake Grimm," the rabbit squeaked. "Yes," Uncle Jake said. "You got a sign for this," the rabbit said, gesturing toward the delivery. Uncle Jake took the clipboard, found his name, and signed it. "What you got in this thing anyway?" the tortoise asked. It weighs a ton." "Oh, this and that," Uncle Jake replied. The rabbit held out his paw and stared up at the family. "Well, thanks for bringing it by," Uncle Jake replied. The rabbit and the tortoise didn't budge. "I guess you probably have other deliveries to make," Uncle Jake continued. "Listen, pal, let's not be around the bush. It's customary to tip for a delivery, especially a backbreaker shipment like this. We brought this thing all the way from the truck and we got here fast. I could have had my partner deliver it, but you wouldn't have gotten it until next year. You know how long a tortoise takes to deliver a package?" "Long time, pal," the tortoise said. "Real long time. That kind of express service deserves a little tip, don't you think? I got a big family. Really, I'm talking big. So, how about throwing a couple extra bills?" "Of course," Uncle Jake said, digging in his pockets. He pulled out a wadded $5 bill and stuffed it into the rabbit's shirt pocket. Then he took the chest off the tortoise's back. "Thanks, pal. Oh, there's one more thing," the rabbit said as he took off his bowl cap. There he had hidden a long brass key, which he handed to Uncle Jake. "Have a nice day and remember to use THD. We get there at any speed you need." The rabbit turned, snatched the back legs of the tortoise like he was a wheelbarrow, and headed back to their truck. "What's this?" Granny asked. "You'll see," Granny Jake said. "Get dressed and meet me in the mirror's room." When they joined him 10 minutes later, they found him standing in front of the chest. "So, girls, remember when we started looking for Goldilocks and I suggested we send her a letter?" The girls nodded. "Well, I realized early on that we weren't going to be able to do that," Uncle Jake said. "Goldilocks keeps moving from one place to the next, faster than we could ever get a letter to her. So I called a few friends for some help, and they sent me this." "What was it?" Sabrina asked. "It's a traveler's chest," Uncle Jake said. "A traveler's what?" Sabrina asked. "Where do you get this?" Granny Rhoda asked as she looked at the chest. "Your father used to talk about these, but I always thought he was pulling my leg." "The Anderson triplets loaned it to us. It's going to help us find Goldilocks," Uncle Jake said. "At least that's what they told me it would do." Sabrina examined the chest. "How does it work?" Uncle Jake took the brass key and opened the lock on the front of the chest. He lifted the lid, but the box was completely empty. "An old empty chest is going to help us find Goldilocks?" Daphne asked. "Oops," Uncle Jake said as he closed the lid. "I forgot to tell it where I wanted to go." "I'm confused," Daphne said. "All you have to do is tell the chest where you want to travel. Watch," Uncle Jake said. "Chest, I'm traveling to the Hotel Cipriani at Giudecca 10 in Venice, Italy." Sabrina and Daphne stared at Uncle, then looked at each other. "I think he's finally lost it," Daphne added. "It was bound to happen," Sabrina added. "Heh, you want to see?" Jake cried. He turned the key in the lock and lifted the lid. Instead of an empty box, Sabrina saw a spiral staircase and immediately felt the familiar tingle of an enchanted item. "Daphne first," Uncle Jake said as he helped her go onto the staircase. Daphne looked up at Granny Rhoda as if she were unsure of what to do, but Granny's nod gave her permission to go. Sabrina went next, followed by Uncle Jake. "Mom, want to come along?" Sabrina could see her grandmother's nervous face over the edge of the chest. No, one of us has to stay here, the old lady said. Besides, I'm going to bake some muffins and take them to Robert and Little John. Be careful, Uncle Jake said. Granny promised she would, and backed out of view. Sabrina examined the inside of the chest. The light was dim and grew dimmer as they descended. When they found themselves in pure darkness, Uncle Jake took a small red amulet from one of his jacket pockets. He whispered something into it and it lit up their path. They continued down, step after step, until Sabrina was convinced there was no bottom. She was about to suggest they turn back when she heard her sister bang to something. From her groan, it sounded as if it was something quite hard. Could someone have warned me there would be a door down here? Daphne complained. Sorry, Uncle Jake said. You can open it, but don't step out until you've looked both ways. These travelers just have a tendency to be imprecise, and the doors leading into the real world. Anything could be on the other side. Daphne opened the door and looked to her left and her right. Looks so clear, she said, stepping through the opening. A moment later, Sabrina heard a huge splash and Daphne's cries for help. Chapter 5. Sabrina rushed through the door. There she found her sister bobbing up and down the canal. She nearly fell into it herself, but Uncle Jake pulled her back just in time. Several men in white pants and shorts were standing in long, thin boats that maneuvered down the waterway using tall poles. One used his pole to nudge Daphne to the side of the canal, while Uncle Jake fished her out. When she was safely back on land, she reached into her pocket for her dictionary, but the book was waterlogged and ruined. Her face crinkled up in frustration, and she tossed it into a nearby trash can. What does imprecise mean? Daphne snapped. It means not exact, Sabrina said. Daphne scowled. You should have asked before, Sabrina said. Daphne scowled harder and emptied the water from her shoes. Welcome to Venice, girls, Uncle Jake said. Sabrina studied her surroundings. Scarecrow had been correct. There weren't streets in Venice, at least not in the part of the city where they were. Instead, the neighborhood seemed to be connected by an elaborate canal system lined by narrow sidewalks. The elegant hotels, office buildings, and apartments on other side of the canals was built high so that their ways never touched the water. And others were for tourists to take on romantic rides through the majestic arches and bridges of Venice. As a native New Yorker, Sabrina was rarely impressed with anything outside of the Big Apple. After all, once a person had seen the Statue of Liberty or one of Nathan's hot dogs at Coney Island, there was little reason to see the rest of the world. But she had to admit Venice was awe-inspiring. So, where's Goldilocks? Sabrina said, pulling her attention away from the amazing scenery and back to the group. She noticed her uncle seemed to be hypnotized by something. He was looking up at the third floor of a hotel across the canal. There, he said, pointing at a beautiful woman standing on the balcony. She had bright blonde curls. She had tight blonde curls, a sun-kissed tan, and a warm smile. She, too, was gazing out at the amazing city. Sabrina was overwhelmed, unsure of whether to laugh or cry. For months, she and Daphne had thought that only their parents abandoned them, only to find out they had been kidnapped. Rescuing them had provided little comfort since they were both victims of a magical spell. Now that obstacle wasn't almost hurdled too. Hope, wonder, and joy were burning in her heart, threatening to explode like a shaken bottle of soda pop. The feelings were mirrored in the faces of her uncle as well. Daphne seemed to Daphne, despite being soaked, was grinning ear to ear. Uncle Jake's fatigue seemed to. That seems to be the end of this video. I'll see you later. Goodbye.